Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to you. I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit about smart cities, and what I'm going to focus on today is going to be on the need for smart cities, what's driving us towards smart cities, what are the challenges that we face, and what we as Microsoft see a kind of a structure in driving us towards smart cities. So in terms of smart cities, one of the things that I wanted to call out was why do we need smart cities? What's happening today? This is an era of very rapid urbanization. When we look at what the population growth is today, or what the population spread is today, about 50% of the world's population today is currently living in cities. By about 2050, you will have about 70% of the world's population moving into cities. In fact, in Asia, there is about 100,000 people moving into cities, or people being born in cities every single week. And that's kind of what's driving us towards the need for smart cities. Today, cities actually occupy only about 2% of the land mass of this earth, just 2% of the land mass. 80% of economic output, or the world's GDP, still comes out of these cities. 80% of energy consumption in the world is in these cities. So 2% of the land actually consumes 80% of the energy produced on the earth. And this 2% of the land also is responsible for about 75% of greenhouse emissions. Very concentrated. However, at the same time, while all this is happening, these are also areas of higher education, of learning. Cities are what drives innovations in healthcare. Cities are what drives entrepreneurship. So cities are therefore absolutely responsible for the GDP. Cities, in that sense, are engines for growth. I'm not sure if whether you are. Cities, in that sense, are engines for growth. They are driving our GDP. They are driving our future. So in that sense, when we look at cities, we should also look. Sorry, I think this is jumping a little bit. So while all of that is true, in the sense that rapid urbanization is happening, and these are the reasons for rapid urbanization, and nonetheless, the cities are still engines for growth. And at the same time, what cities end up facing is a huge amount of challenge. All of this urbanization is a challenge. As urbanization happens, there's a huge amount of stress on infrastructure, especially on existing cities. Greenfield cities are a little different, but when you look at brownfield cities, massive, massive stress on infrastructure. Massive stress on things like public safety, health, so on and so forth. The economy continues to change. There is a change in your national economy. There is a change in global economy. As all of this changes, cities need to struggle in order to keep up. Cities ultimately are the harbingers of economic growth for us. So if all of that has to happen, then what do city planners need to do? And city planners today need to do a lot more with a lot less. With all of the changes happening in the cities, the budgets are still tight. The budgets are growing tighter and tighter and tighter. At the same time, the expectations of both the citizens as well as the businesses continue to rise. So for a city planner, the city planner has to face all of these challenges with shrinking budgets, but nonetheless deliver on the promise of tomorrow. So that's, in essence, the need for smart cities. So when I look at smart cities, for a city planner, what does a city planner need to really think of? A city planner, at the end of the day, needs to think of smart cities, not from a perspective of smart infrastructure. The biggest capital in the city, or the biggest capital in the country at the end of the day, is the human capital, is the human resource. So when city planners are looking at planning smart cities, they need to focus on a very people-centric approach. So a people-first approach. For the people-first approach, however, you still need to build on top of an ICT platform. And the ICT platform is something where we need to take advantage of things like the cloud, for instance. Using the cloud, certainly city planners as well as the financial planners can build infrastructure or scale infrastructure in a very cost-effective manner. So the infrastructure can be scalable, can be cost-effective. You can utilize a public cloud, you can utilize a hybrid cloud. We as Microsoft, for instance, are making a huge investment in India in terms of data centers. Data centers are going to come up by the end of the year. City planners can certainly utilize that infrastructure to easily start off some of their smart city infrastructure areas within those data centers instead of replicating. And if we are to realize the vision that the government of India has of 100 smart cities, and I congratulate, of course, the state of UP on signing the agreement with USTDA for Allahabad as one of the first smart cities. If we are to realize that vision, then every smart city cannot be a separate new infrastructure which comes up. There has to be replicable infrastructures which come up. There have to be replicable solutions which get built. If replicable solutions have to be built, then certainly the cloud is one thing that governments can take advantage of, that city planners can take advantage of. Mobility is something that we certainly need to bring into the mix. Today, most of our population, India is certainly a mobile-first country. It's a mobile-first nation. It is not a PC-first nation. It's not a tablet-first nation. India is a nation in which certainly we are moving towards the cloud, but we are the world's third largest nation in terms of smartphones. And we will soon be the second largest in terms of smartphones. When we look at mobility, and whether I look at mobility in terms of sensors, whether I look at mobility in terms of devices, today which are phones, tablets, and so on and so forth, tomorrow there will be something else. Now, as we look at all of that, how do we harness all of the information that is coming in from there, either coming into the government, or information which can be going out to the citizens? And again, when it is going out to the citizens, is this information that is coming in or going out, how is it that we make it available to citizens? Literacy levels are different. Ability to use mobile devices is different. So, should the ability of citizens to either speak to a device, work with gestures, work with different languages be taken into account or not? And that's something that city planners need to plan for. The social medium. If we look at the social medium, there is a huge amount of data flow. Governments obviously need to be engaged with citizens. Our elections of 2014 was a huge example of that. Political parties used the social medium to connect with the voters, and people who used it the best were obviously the most successful at this point in time. So when we look at smart cities, how do you have a two-way dialogue with your citizens through social media is another important aspect. Big data and analytics. Every single city has a lot of data everywhere. Now it's a question of how do we utilize the data, how do we get analytics out of it, but not only do we get analytics out of it, what insights do we provide so that city planners can effectively take actions to make the life of a citizen easier, or to provide information to businesses as they need them. Now with all of that, when we are thinking in terms of all of this, there are three levers which we as Microsoft believe are highly, highly important. The three levers, first of all, are to transform the operations and infrastructure. When we look at operations and infrastructure, today multiple departments exist in any city. If you need to get a license, you need to enroll in a school, you need to get a business permit, all of these kind of things, you need to apply for a passport. You keep providing the same information again and again and again. You interact with different departments of the government, and all of the information probably exists somewhere. So the concept that the Prime Minister has of a digital locker and a digital identity is very relevant today, where all of your information can exist in one single space and you can interact very easily. So transforming the infrastructure is probably the first most important thing. Engaging citizens and businesses is something that I talked about, and in the subsequent slides I'll talk a little bit more about this. That, at the end of the day, is the primary premise on which a smart city must function. And then finally, how do we accelerate innovation and opportunity? At the end of the day, if we are making the city smart, A, it is to make the citizen's life easy, but B, it is to be able to drive that city as an engine of economic growth for the state or for the country. Having said that, now I'll move on specifically to when I talk about transformation of operations and infrastructure. First of all, when we look at this, we say enable new capabilities with flexible cloud. Cloud, at the end of the day, is something which exists all around us. The state is putting up a state data center. There is a national data center which exists. Companies like us or other companies are putting up other public data centers. So how do we utilize all of this infrastructure which has already been put in order to enable the city planners, A, to move fast, B, to have replicable solutions? If tomorrow you want to have 10 smart cities across UP, then can you, of course, utilize cloud infrastructure to make sure that that speed with which you achieve 10 smart cities is rapid enough? Also, can you look at scalability of solutions? So for example, if elections are happening, information needs to flow. Do you really need to build infrastructure for that, or can you take it from the cloud? Or if there are any such events where there is information required suddenly, Do you scale up your servers or can you take advantage of the cloud? So the flexibility comes in from there. Innovate on your terms with modern solutions and big data platform. At the end of the day, every city is swimming with millions of bits of information or lots of information sitting in files somewhere. How do you make sure that all of that information gets made sense of? Insights come in from that information. Analytics is not enough. At the end of the day, insights need to come in. So the mayor of the city, the commissioner of the city, how do I make sense of the information which is coming in? If it is information, for example, on the spread of a disease, then in that case, how do I know which ward are so many cases of swine flu happening? And therefore, where should I concentrate my medical forces? What emergency responses should I have? The traffic, for instance, if the traffic at the end of the day has to be monitored and I'm getting insights on where traffic is moving in at what speed, then how do I perhaps deploy more traffic police in order to make that move easier, and so on and so forth. Or if there is an accident in the city, there is a tree fallen somewhere else, what is it that's causing more of a gridlock? Do I get an insight from that to be able to deploy my forces very rapidly and very efficiently? You empower city employees with the devices and apps for them to be able to take action. Today, do you have to be sitting in an office in order to take action? Or can you get the insights that I just talked about across multiple platforms? Can you get it on a mobile phone through an app? Can you get it on a tablet through an app, so that when you're on the move as a city official, can you make the right decisions with the right amount of information coming in? Or do you have to reach the office in order to do all of that? So that's transformation, in my opinion, of your operations and infrastructure, and also making sure that all the silos are broken down, and so that you have one database and information which flows across to multiple people within the government in order to be able to take effective decisions. The second pillar that we believe is Microsoft, which is enormously important, is having, let's say, transformed the operations and transformed the infrastructure. Does that make your city smart? I don't believe that it does. At the end of the day, it is about the people. It is about the citizens. It is about the businesses. It is about government departments. How do you enable those government departments? How do you enable businesses? How do you enable citizens to have either an easier life, make more rapid decisions, or be able to, let's say, innovate faster in terms of businesses? So when I look at this, certainly we need to deliver personalized services and apps anytime, anywhere. So when we are looking at a citizen, for instance, a citizen will want to engage with the government once across perhaps one portal, and not many times. If I want to get my child admitted to school, if I want to get somebody admitted into a hospital, if I want to get a permit for a business, should my information exist in one single place or not? Should it be easier for me to work with the government? Same for a business as well. Should I be able to get my license much easier? Now that in itself is personalized service which you can make available either to a government, to another government department, or to a business, or to a citizen. So how do you do that really? Having made all of the infrastructure smarter, how do you make sure that the interaction with the citizens and businesses gets smarter? Through citizen-centric apps, through business-centric apps across all devices. How do you enable a real-time dialogue with the citizens? Now, effectively, should the government be a one-way government? Are you passing information to people? Or are you allowing your citizens to come in and make your smart city better? Is it a two-way dialogue? Is it a one-way dialogue? One way, it's not a dialogue, it's a monologue actually. So therefore, are you listening to citizens? Are you listening to businesses? Are you listening to perhaps other influencers in order to be able to change the way that the city functions? Certainly. And for that, social media is perhaps the most effective mechanism. To make sense of all of the social media which floats around, that's why you need analytics, that's why you need insights from all of that. If you can draw insights, then you can certainly engage with the citizens much better. And then finally, spur city app development for economic growth. At the end of the day, can you take data which is available within the government, can you make that available to other private businesses, for instance, so that they can build applications which are either unique and something which provides value to a business, or something which provides value to a citizens. So can you perhaps strip a certain amount of personal information, but still make that data available to businesses for them to be able to provide better services to you as citizens? All of that, I believe, is citizen engagement. All of that, I believe, is business engagement. And that makes the city a little bit more smarter as opposed to just transforming operations and infrastructure. And finally, what do we need to do? At the end of the day, is to accelerate innovation and opportunity. You make the city smarter, you transform the operations, you transform the infrastructure, you engage with the citizens, you engage with the businesses, and that's great. The end goal is still that you provide that as a platform for acceleration of the economy, to grow the GDP, to be able to have a competitive advantage with, let's say, other cities in the world. So how do you do all of that? And that's innovation. That's empowering the youth in the 21st century to learn in a different way. At the end of the day, education is changing. Education is no more about sitting in a classroom. Education is also no more about bringing technology to a student. It's not a question of, let's say a student has a laptop or a student has a tablet. That's not enough. What do? Do you then make sure that digital content in the right format is available to students? Do you give them the opportunity to collaborate? Do you give them the opportunity to have personalized learning? Do you give them the opportunity to be able to collaborate beyond their own city with people in other parts of the world? So how do you transform that education? How do you ignite the young minds of today? The education which we had when we were in school is perhaps not the best system of education today. Cities at the end of the day are still, in my mind, temples of education. Education is what drives innovation at the end of the day. So how do you therefore make sure that along with transforming the infrastructure, along with engaging citizens, along with engaging businesses, how do you make sure that you're empowering the youth so that new skills come in? And the second one over there is expand digital inclusion to citizens. So skill development at the end of the day. Make sure that people in the city are all accessing that information which you've got, the infrastructure that you've put together, all of the engagement that is happening with the citizens. For all of that to happen, you need to make sure that there is digital inclusion. In India today, ultimately, PC penetration is still very, very little. But what is certainly penetrating is the mobile phone. So how do you make sure that you are able to engage with people perhaps across the mobile phone? How do you make sure that all of that happens? How do you make sure that you do skill enablement? Whether that's a plumber, whether that's somebody who's providing some other kind of service. How do you make sure that you get them to be able to be part of the digital economy? How can a plumber advertise his services? How can these services from a number of people be put on a platform? Can a city, for instance, create a portal where people providing such services can provide information, and people who want to access those services can then access those services? The city of Surat is planning to do something like that, for instance. So that, in my mind, is digital inclusion. And certainly nurturing new businesses. The city also at the same time has to provide a spark to the entrepreneurs, to excite the entrepreneurs to have them come in. How does the city make sure that on top of everything that you've done, transforming the infrastructure, engaging with the citizens, you also make sure that the city then becomes a place where entrepreneurs come in, bring businesses, bring ideas, spark the innovation in the city, and then certainly drive your GDP forward. So I think those, to my mind, looking at it from a three-lever perspective, it's transformation of the infrastructure and operations, it's citizen engagement, and at the end of the day, it's accelerating innovation and opportunity. With that, I will end my session, and perhaps the next speaker will come on.